We're going to continue that, right? So now we're going to talk about a thing. You may have heard of it. It's called the internet and its future. It's a little scary because it seems like such an ambiguous thing, right? The internet, it's become that. It's almost become like a source of energy for us. So we're going to go a little bit into the future of the internet. What's going to be happening in the next 10 years? How are we addressing these issues? .co's, .everything, .nike, .whatever. And two of the very first people to do that, I'm going to introduce them very, very quickly. Juan Calle, the CEO of .co. And to help him with this discussion is going to be Susan Amat, the co-founder of Venture Hive. So guys, looking forward to it.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. So this is a really exciting day for us. We have with us one of the really stars of the tech startup scene in Miami, who has gone on to show the world that you can start something in Miami, grow it, and have a really fabulous exit. So the conversation today is going to be, why do we care about the domain world? It's not usually the most interesting topic to most of us, but this will shed a lot of light on the difference between what happened a few years ago, where you had a choice of a .com or not, and now, when you go on and you're seeing hundreds of options. So today we have Juan Calle, who started .co, illustrious entrepreneur with several exits, and the story of .co in itself is just fascinating. So why don't we go in a little bit into your history and background, and start with, how do you end up going and getting .co and being able to build it into the brand you now have?
Is this working? Yeah. So like Susan said, this is not an interesting story. You can all head for the exits now. No. Thank you for the interest, Susan. So yeah, I've been an entrepreneur since '99. Actually founded the first company out of college at the University of Miami. It was called Te Respondo. My co-founder is actually right there. And it was a pay-per-click search engine. Basically, we were doing what Google AdWords ended up doing around 2002. Search for something, you get little ads. I mean, that's obviously the core business model around Google and Yahoo as well, even MSN. And we built that for Latin America, for Mexico, Argentina, and Brazil were our biggest markets. We went through the bubble, went through the tough times during the bubble. I remember having the cool apartment in South Beach where we would run that we used to run our company from. Shut that down, ended up in my garage, and rebuilt the company there since 2001. Started growing very quickly in Brazil. The model worked really well, the pay-per-click model, and ended up selling the company to Yahoo in 2005. So that was the first company, and although it wasn't a huge exit, it at least helped us establish our credibility to go on to the next thing. Experimented with a couple of business models around domain names. So we bought a bunch of travel websites like NewYorkHotels.com, MiamiHotels.com, LondonHotels.com, et cetera, thinking that we were going to build this large global network of city-specific hotel booking sites. And that didn't work so well. But the good thing is that by virtue of having invested a significant amount of money in domain names, we understood, we learned about the scarcity of domain names. We understood that .com was a scarce resource. And that felt sort of unnatural to us. It didn't make any sense. Why do internet entrepreneurs and the internet as a whole is sort of held hostage to .com? And so around the same time, we were introduced to this idea of launching .co as an alternative to .com, .net, .org, et cetera. Except that there were big complications around it. .co is the country code for Colombia. And but the beauty of .co is, although it's the country code for Colombia, it also stands for company around the world. It stands for corporations. It stands for community. It's meaningful in multiple languages and in multiple cultures, and in various contexts. So we had to actually go out and bid for .co in this very complex procurement process with the government of Colombia, and actually retain the rights to run it. And I'd probably need a few beers to tell you the whole story around that. But essentially, we were awarded the contract after submitting a 1,165-page bid. And we finally launched the business, changing the concept of .co to a global alternative in July 20th of 2010.
And why do you think .co has been able to grow at the exponential rate it did, up to 1.7 million domains registered in over 200 countries? How does that happen? Because there were a lot of different extensions people could have chosen by that time. Why do you think it had this phenomenal success?
Yeah, that's a long question. It's a long answer. I'd have to tell you the history of the 4 years of the company.
It's okay.
Okay, where's the timer? All right. So I think the biggest thing that we can, in terms of our contributions to the business, I think there were two main things. Number one was having had an internet marketing background. We understood, or we felt rather, that to turn this into a meaningful business, into a multi-million-dollar business, we would have to turn .co into a brand, right? And that, I'm sure there's a lot of marketers in the room, and they're like, oh, well, that's obvious. But believe it or not, the domain names throughout history, and given how they were created, they've been treated as utilities, right? You flip the switch and light turns on. It's the same thing with domain names. You go buy it at a registrar, or GoDaddy, or one of these companies, type in the name you want and you get it, and that's it. It's utilitarian. Us coming from an internet marketing background without the sort of baggage that's built around the domain name industry, we felt, okay, let's turn this into a brand. And the best way to do that is, if you take the example of Nike, brand association, right? So we went after some of the top brands on the internet, some of the top guys, particularly around the startup world, tech community, Silicon Valley, New York, London, and we struck deals with them so that they would use .co. So one of the first deals we landed before we launched the company back in March of 2010 was a deal with Twitter. We got them to use t.co. I'm sure you guys have seen all the URL shorteners out there. One of them is t.co. While that's not a big consumer-facing brand that would use a .co domain, it established a huge amount of credibility into the technology that we were building. It established credibility for us, right, as entrepreneurs, as sort of the people behind this concept of launching .co. So by the time that was one deal. We did another deal as well with Naval Ravikant, the guy from AngelList, and he's using angel.co. So these sorts of brand association deals helped us grow the interest for .co in a massive way, so that the day that we launched, there were, I think, in the first 24 hours, I think there were like 250,000 registrations just on the day that we launched. So it's the Nike approach of associating the brand to, in their case, the Michael Jordans of the world, right? In our case, it's the big tech brands, the big entrepreneurs, and that's helped us propel the brand forward. That, tied to changing the proposition from a utility to something more of a brand, or rather, decommoditizing the space by adding value. So again, you go to a registrar and all you get is these little words, right? These letters, these ones and zeros that turn into characters. As part of our objective of adding value, we created the membership program, a membership program. So when you buy a .co domain, you're not just getting the letters, you're also getting a network where you have access to education, promotion, networking opportunities, all around tied all around the startup community, and that's been very successful for our customers.
I remember the first time I was watching TV and you guys were local, so I'm like, yay, .co, right? But then when you're watching and you see the O.com commercials for Overstock, all of a sudden it really shed light on how big of a phenomenon it had become. Yeah, O.co. That's a big deal. O.co is a very big deal, and that's when it really hit home to a lot of us in Miami that you had gone big time in a lot of ways. And that community really speaks to, we have a .co, and a lot of other startups do, and you definitely feel a sense of we're fighting the man in some way, that we chose that instead of going a more traditional route with the .com or whatever. So that sense of community has been really important in the scene.
Yeah, huge. And that community, it's something that when you're building a company, you try to, everyone's going after, okay, let's build a community, right? And how you do that, how you put some structure around that it's extremely difficult. It sort of happens by, frankly, the only way a community can be built is you have to let your customers build it. And that is essentially what started happening with .co little by little bit. We started seeing that entrepreneurs out there were sort of taking a stance, that similar stance that we were taking, as why are we hostage to .com or to these very strict options? I want to kind of put my foot down and do something different. So it's kind of maybe call it a counterculture movement, sort of, to build your business on a .co domain, and that's appealing to a lot of people, millions of them actually. So.
And I think the exit especially speaks to what you've been able to build in such a short period of time. Having a $109 million exit is pretty awesome. So can you kind of answer two questions in one? Why NuStar? And how does that then take us into this bigger picture of what's happening in the world of domains? Because it has shifted so much in the last 12 months, and in the next 12 months, there's going to be thousands of domains to choose from, of top-level domains. So why NuStar, and what's happening that they were the best choice for you going forward?
Okay. Wow, another long question. So yeah, it is a good. The exit is a good segue as to what's happening in the industry. Maybe about a year and a half ago, my co-founders and I kind of got together and said, okay, how are we going to grow the business? The business is growing really well. It's very profitable, but how are we going to take the company to really the next level? Maybe thinking about doing an IPO or something like that in the future. And one thing is happening in the internet that sort of is the undertone for what led to some of the decisions that we made. The biggest thing is the fact that ICANN, which is the body that regulates our industry, is opening up domain extensions to an unlimited number of them. So as we now operate in this restricted world of limited options, we're now going into a world where you're going to have .nike, just about whatever, really. And that fragmentation in the industry is really exciting for us as a company, and I'll explain why later on. But it also means that it also meant that we had to adapt to that new paradigm. And so we applied to ICANN for about 14 new top-level domains, so .inc, .llc, .ltd, a number of them around sort of corporate endings, similar to, we wanted to stick within the theme of .co being company. But we also applied for some generic terms like .law and .movie, a number of them, with the goal of building up a large portfolio of these and operating sort of a more horizontal business, not just with .co. In addition to that, we were going to build our own retail presence, which we did. It's called pop.co. And by retail, I mean people can actually go to pop.co and register a domain, get an email, and get a website in less than 60 seconds. It's actually a pretty cool service. So to bring all these three things together, we said, let's go out and raise a bunch of money, right? Let's do a big round. We're already profitable. We're doing well. Let's raise some money. So we hired an investment bank. RBC Capital Markets came along and started looking for alternatives. We went and talked to the biggest players in the space. And very quickly, it became apparent that what these companies were interested in was .co. They kind of didn't give a shit about all of our other ideas. and well, I mean, we kind of went with that. And along the way, ended up selling the company to NuStar about a month ago. So very, very exciting exit. But it also very exciting, as entrepreneurs, very exciting exit. We have a bunch of happy investors. That's great. But for the company itself, it's what we aspire to be as a company. They can do it 10 times better. They're a huge public company. They have a much larger balance sheet. They're extremely profitable. They're one of the largest players in this TLD, in this new paradigm of top-level domains. They're behind 300 plus of these domain TLD applications. So I think in terms of the vision that we had, that we were going for, these guys can do it 10 times better than we can. So we'll see how that works out.
And you've already been working with them for years, so it wasn't just like an unknown entity that came and bid.
Exactly. So we put in the bankers put in a process to entertain alternatives from multiple companies. We got several bids, but it became pretty clear during the process that NuStar was our best option for a couple of reasons. One is they already knew the company. So back in, if you backtrack to 2008, when we were first establishing the bid to run.co, one of the things that government in Colombia wanted was somebody that actually knew how to run DNS and sort of the infrastructure behind a domain extension, which is really robust. I mean, we're talking about DNS nodes in 16 different locations around the world, that sort of thing, that sort of heavy-duty internet infrastructure. And of course, we didn't know how to do that. We had no clue, but we wanted to win this thing. So we struck a joint venture with NuStar. So they owned a small percentage of the company going into it. And so they knew the company by the time we wanted to exit, and they understood our vision. They already knew our team. So although bids were competitive, I think they were clearly the best option.
And I've been hearing from a lot of people that I consider pretty smart that domain names are becoming increasingly irrelevant. With search engines, Facebook, everything, Tumblr. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a great argument. It's a great topic of discussion. We keep you have these various camps out there on the internet. First, you have the guys saying, well, search makes domain names irrelevant. You have other guys that say, well, apps make domain names irrelevant. And we have guys like Mark Andreessen, who says all that stuff is shifting back over to the web as you see apps grow and as you see search grows, it's really all just reinforcing the web. And of course, we buy that argument. We buy the argument that the web is only benefiting from the growth of digital media in general. So apps are accelerating the growth of the web. Search is accelerating the growth of the web. And a good example of that is something, there's one more piece before I mention that. There's one more piece that's accelerating the growth of the web, and it is these walled gardens like a Facebook, right? Some would argue that if you have a Facebook, it sort of slows down the growth of the web. It's actually the other way around. When you have good utilities on the internet like Facebook, it allows more people to get online. And a great example of that is Colombia. It's probably the largest market in terms of internet penetration for Facebook. The growth of Facebook in Colombia has been insane. It's amazing. And it's actually helped people get online. Like their first point of contact with the web was Facebook. It wasn't the internet. They got online because they wanted to meet their friends on Facebook, or they wanted to see their family members who lived, in some other country, etc. And then, so what happens is these people get on Facebook, and then they say, "Oh, this is great, and this is also, I guess this is part of the internet, and so maybe I should establish a website." And so what do? They go out and buy a domain name, and the whole process starts accelerating. The same thing is happening with apps. People that had no interaction with the web whatsoever, all of a sudden get a smartphone, they start downloading apps, and then guess what? They're interested in getting a website, and eventually they go and buy a website. So what we're seeing is the growth of domain names is accelerating. It's part of the reason why ICANN is introducing all these new alternatives. And search is also causing people to care more than they did before about domain names because they need to stand out within search. So what people are doing in search is they're typing in a destination. They need to go somewhere. They're typing in an intent, and that intent needs to drive them to a website. And so that website, where they land, becomes that much more important. So we're in the industry of domain names, and we're betting on domain names because we see the need for them growing quicker and quicker and quicker.
So with all these thousands of new extensions coming in, that creates a lot of competition for you guys. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, look, it's interesting, and that goes back to what I was saying, that we are actually pretty excited about this process. And the reason is the biggest challenge that we had as in the company when we were building the company was going to presentations like this one, or having conversations with entrepreneurs and convincing them that it was okay to build their website in a .co. And let's face it, it's a new thing, it's a new technology, and like any new technology, there's an adoption curve. And ours, the biggest thing decelerating that adoption curve was this thing that's ingrained in people's minds, that you have to type in a .com after the end of a URL. And so to combat that, we can throw all the advertising in the world, we can do all the deals in the world. The only way we can combat that what's ingrained in people's brains is if we get a bunch of other companies like us, like ours, and have them do just as much advertising, strike as many deals, and altogether the tide will rise for all of us. And in that world of sort of deregulation, we are very confident about being able to compete, and so, that's why we like it.
And what does this mean for a business owner? So if I'm a brand, I'm a business owner, now how do I even start to decide what the right extension is? I know that .nyc is coming out soon, so if I had anything to do with New York, that would make a lot of sense for me to have that, pride. But what does it mean for me as a business owner deciding among thousands of top-level domains?
Yeah, and that's a tough one, because we're in the early stages of these changes that are happening. So, questions that you may ask yourselves when you start to see this happening are, okay, how is Google going to sort of take these on? How is Google going to start indexing these new websites, these new TLDs quickly? Are consumers going to understand that it's okay to navigate? Are web browsers going to understand what you're trying to type in? What are some of these products and services that are attached to these domain extensions that are, how can they impact my brand? These are all things that are happening as we speak. So there's no clear answer to the question, but clearly where we're going is a world where you have options, right? You can get .nyc, because .nyc might be more suitable, more recognizable for the city of New York. You can get .miami for Miami. You can get .plumbing because it happens to have, some sort of service type that's suitable for plumbers. Truly, you can get .flowers, or BMW might start advertising instead of BMW.com. They might start advertising 7 Series.BMW, or new .BMW, or promotion.BMW, right, for specific sales and events like that. So it's going to be a slow progression. Some of them will fail. And that's something that you as consumers need to be paying attention to. Some of them are backed by more reputable companies than others. And that's something that as consumers you need to pay attention to. And you also need to pay attention to how Google is going to treat them. And that's going to be a process. I think it's going to be a process of, a slow process of figuring out, for Google to figure out which ones of these make sense. So take the case of .co. When we first launched, it wasn't clear if Google was going to index .co domains as a global alternative. And that was a huge part of our business plan. It was like, oh, if we don't get this to happen, that is a problem, right, in terms of building our brand. But eventually, we got enough of these great companies to use .co to the point where Google said, okay, this makes sense, this is credible, we're going to start ranking it just as well, just as we do .com, .net, and some of these others. But it was a process. It didn't happen overnight, and I think that might happen with domain extensions as well. Some browsers will take time recognizing new domain extensions, but overall, I think the branding opportunities, some of these product integration opportunities that we'll start seeing will make the web that much more exciting. And if you agree with my thesis that all these new technologies, all forms of digital technology are allowing the web to grow, then having all these alternatives and all these new options and this value what makes the web more exciting, better for consumers.
So what other questions are still looming in the industry? Because it sounds like there are still so many unknowns. What else is going on and is up for discussion within the professional industry?
So a lot of things. Number one is, truly what is the value that some of these domain extensions are going to bring? So like in the case of .co, we have our membership program, which I mentioned earlier. But you could do much more than that. You could do very cool product integrations with domain extensions. And we haven't seen the first forms of that yet. We haven't seen all of them launch. They're all launching, the first batch, which is about, Monty, correct me if I'm wrong, 1,200? 1,000. There's 1,000 new ones coming online in the next, 24 months, more or less. We already saw the first batch, and they're starting to gain traction. So how many of these will come to market and how quickly will they grow is something that, we need to be observing during the next few months.
It's been very interesting, even in researching this, to go on and see how most of them are still in the $8 to $12 range, and then you have .rich for $30,000. There's 3 or 4 for $30,000 for the extension, so that's an interesting business model. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, I don't know how well they'll do.
We'll see. So what have you learned as an entrepreneur through all of this? What advice would you give to entrepreneurs, whether or not they're in this industry?
Yeah, okay, timer. What advice? I probably the biggest thing that I take from this experience in building this company and some of the others that I've been involved in, and the ones that haven't been successful, is you really have to shoot for the stars. You have to shoot for the stars. When we dream big, it's got to be bigger than you. It's got to be beyond just making money or anything like that. There really has to be a big vision behind what you're doing, because boys, competition intense. The challenge is going to be intense. I can't tell you how many times we were told that we were crazy, that we were stupid, that nothing like this would ever work. Nobody needed a new alternative. Nobody would ever consider a domain name a brand. You can't build product on domain extensions. Every single form of, critique, we were exposed to it. Every form, even unfortunately, even starting our company from Miami. I remember a Silicon Valley guy, when we went to pitch him the idea of using a .co for some of his startups, the first thing he focused on was, "You're in Miami?" And actually, that conversation reinforced my belief in being involved in the Miami community and putting our foot down and saying, we're staying in Miami, we're going to build our company in Miami, we're going to show those guys in Silicon Valley that it's possible to do it and that we can exit it. And so, well, that's another story. Thank you. Very happy about that, by the way. Very prominent guy in the Valley, which I was happy to send him a press
basket.
release.
Yes, that's awesome.
We'll send him a fruit basket.
Yes,
Yeah.
on behalf of Miami.
There you go. But anyway, why did I get into that? So advice
Good
is
business advice.
Just forget about all these all the naysayers. Forget about the new words on the street, the fancy words on the street. Just if you have a dream, go out and do it, man. Build it. Build your company. It's the most rewarding. Forget about the financial side. There's nothing more rewarding than getting to your office and building something that you want to build. I can't describe the experience. That doesn't mean you have to be CEO. It doesn't mean you have to be the founder of a company. But just get involved with a company that's building something, that's trying to change a certain industry or a certain space, and I guarantee you will be a happy person. It's nothing more rewarding than that.
So other than being a very, very active angel investor over the next few years, what's in your future?
Well, I'm a shitty angel investor, I should say.
Start now.
Some of the ones in the audience might tell you that my batting average is no, but really we build companies. And when I say we, I'm talking about some of the people that are myself and even my family members who I share my everything with, and some of the individuals that are around me. We're good at building businesses. We're not great at angel investing because we always want to get in there and then do it for them. And that's not how angel investing works. So I think, sure, we might do a couple of angel investments here and there, but the big thing is what is the next big business going to be? There's three projects that we have in mind that we're looking at seriously. But the first step is to sort of take a step back and reflect. There's a tendency to kind of go into a new, after selling a company, to just want to do the next thing quickly. You forget about how difficult it was to build a business. You forget about the endless hours and the challenges and the luck that kind of we found along the way. I mean, there's a lot of luck involved in building a successful business, and you sort of think you can replicate that success very quickly. So first step is take a step back, kind of smell the flowers, as they say, but that said, smell the flowers quickly and keep going. Because we have not only do we want to build more businesses, but we have a responsibility to do it. I feel like we were given these resources, and we are holding on to those resources temporarily, and we need to deploy those resources in either in contribution of something that we know how to do, which is building businesses. So that's what we got to do.
Awesome. We have 6 seconds for a question. Anybody? Really fast. Any questions?
Okay. All right. Good. Let's go.
Perfect timing.
Okay. With all of these new top-level domains, like right now, if you're a U.S. company, you don't have to buy that many to protect your brand. But with all of these options, isn't it going to be very expensive for a company to protect their brand as far as making sure that you have, yourcompany.com.net.info. Now you have to do many more to maintain that your brand.
Yeah, let me just start. Let me start by saying that this may sound harsh, but the whole brand protection thing is a really shitty industry. Don't fall prey to the brand protection schemes. I think they're all bullshit, and I'm telling you that coming from the guy that launched .co, right? Which, in the eyes of many, was a great move to kind of scheme people away from dollars just to protect their brand on .com. We actually gave domain names away to the top brands around the world, so that they wouldn't have to buy it from us. That worked really well. And I think you're going to see in this new process, in this new paradigm, you're going to see a lot of rules established so that you're not forced to protect your brand as you were in the past, right? If you're a Facebook, you're a Google, you're an IBM, sure, you might want to protect your brand around 1,000 top-level domains. But if you're an entrepreneur, you're a small, medium-sized business, even a medium-sized business, frankly, don't fall prey to it. You don't need it. I mean, the amount of issues, or the issues you're going to have because somebody is using your domain name in another extension, it's just irrelevant. It might be a little bit of a headache when you get that email, somebody's kind of, trying to hold you prey to it, but otherwise ignore it.
Anything else really fast? Oh, they cut us off. Okay. Thank you so much for being so open with us. This was a fascinating conversation.
Thank you
very much.
All right. Good.